Having fun here at CJAD 800. David Hertel filling in for Elias, who's on paternity leave. Well, now we're going to talk about something that is not as funny. It was long expected, but now it's been confirmed. 2023 marked the hottest year in history. Well, history of recorded history, because we don't know how hot it was like 2,000 years ago. Marked by a procession of climatic disaster. Was that it? Climatic disaster. The world saw our lives get that much hotter, and not in a good way. The past year saw an average temperature of 14.98 degrees Celsius, which is 1.48 degrees warmer than the climate of the industrial era. And now many fear the direction we seem to be heading in. Joining me now is the Liberal M&A for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce. She is the official opposition critic for the environment and the fight against climate change. And I also invite her because before she went into politics, she was a very, very strong and smart policy expert on this topic. Desiree McGraw. Desiree, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, David. It's always great to be with you.
So before I get into climate, I have to talk to you about the story that's been dominating Quebec media for the past 24 hours. Denis Coderre considering a run at the Liberal leadership. So I know you won't get me a straight answer, but do you want Denis Coderre as your leader?
Another hot topic, David. No, I'm happy you raised it because, of course, it's in the
I had
news
no choice. I had no choice.
Look, I think it's great. The reality is he hasn't officially declared, and no one's officially declared. I think it's the fall this year where we'll see the formal process underway. I'm very happy to see more candidates, and I think we'll be seeing more quality candidates coming into the race. I have no doubt about it. So I think this is really good news for the party and for the province. And I think the reality is, even though we have some of the most talented parliamentarians of the province, I'm not the one saying it was sondage by La Presse showing Mara Whiskey, André Fortin, best parliamentarians of the year. Madois, Nika Cadet, the rising star. These are incredible parliamentarians, and I think we're doing, a solid job as parliamentarians and legislators. But the reality is that's not translating enough on the ground. What's going to take a kind of an increase in public attention and relevance is this leadership race. So I think this is really exciting that folks, that Quebecers are talking about the party in positive ways. So I think this is a very positive development, but there's no way that I am committing at this point to any candidates. I'm going to be looking at alignment around values and priorities, but I think this is a great development.
I'm starting to get some talk about a certain Desiree McGraw running. She should run.
Oh my goodness, David! That thank you. That I'm very kind and I'm flattered, but I can assure you I have no intention of running. I'm still learning the job of M&A and very much enjoying it and the privilege of representing my riding. I can assure you that is not my intention. However, I will be very actively involved and putting my support behind a strong leader who is a strong liberal and who's all about setting up the next generation for success, which is why I went into politics. So
Fair
yes,
enough.
I'll be active, but not as a candidate.
All right. Okay, you've been a good sport. I'll move on to climate. It's rare that I can speak to a politician who actually has expertise from their previous careers in the topic. So this is always interesting. We can go a bit deeper. Now, I don't want to talk as much about the statistics. It seems every year we get some sort of report telling us that basically in terms of climate change, we're heading thoroughly in the wrong direction. Fair enough. But as individuals, and the thing is that we see these reports, okay, the planet's getting warmer, we're not doing enough. Let's bring it down to, okay, the relationship we have with our municipal governments and our provincial government, where you are the official opposition critic.
Yeah.
What do we need to do more collectively to turn this around and start making real gains on the climate change front? Earlier this morning, I don't know if you had a chance to hear that. I was speaking with the spokesperson for the Insurance Bureau of Canada. I mean, over $3 billion in claims, private claims last year. It's going really, really and quickly in the bad direction.
Absolutely, David. And the statistics both around climate and the economic and environmental impacts of climate change are staggering, because we understand that climate change is a social, environmental, and economic issue, and it is the issue of our time, and it is the reason that I went into politics, because, as you said, it can't just be individual action. That is necessary, but far from sufficient. We need bold and courageous action by governments. It's a question of political courage, and I'm going to quote my mentor, Al Gore: political will, thankfully, is a renewable resource. And the reality is we know the science, and actually we know the solutions. What has been lacking is the political will and courage. So even in Quebec, and we're considered to be a leader within Canada and the world because we do not produce fossil fuel energy, but we are huge consumers on a per capita basis. So our défi, our challenge in Quebec is to reduce consumption, particularly in the transport sector and heavy transport. So there's a lot that we can do individually, but government has a critical role to play in identifying the targets, in identifying 100% of the measures to get us to our targets. Right now, under the CAQ government, they've only identified 60% of the measures to get us to our target of 2030, and then that isn't even on track to get us to carbon neutrality by 2050. So there's a lot to do to be very concrete. We need to stop. We can't get the bragging rights to be leaders on climate change without doing the hard work. And in Quebec, it's consumption. So we need government measures to incentivize in a positive way reduction of consumption, moving away from fossil fuels, and then macro policies, particularly in the transport sector.
So, Desiree, I agree with you on everything you just said, and I think most people do. But then you see the 2022 provincial election. You were there alongside former Liberal leader Dominique Anglade, talking about Projet Eco and talking about environment, and Quebecers didn't connect with that message. And when you see the polling, I mean, the last Léger polls on what Quebecers care about, climate is nowhere near the top. So, and we're still buying more SUVs. We're not investing in mass transit. So, I mean, how do we, but again, when you tell everybody, are you worried about climate? They say yes, but pocketbook issues are much more important right now than climate issues.
Right. And I understand, because cost of living is so high, people aren't going to invest in heat pumps unless the government puts into place a program to subsidize massively heat pumps, right? So that's where the public policy comes in place.
Okay.
This is why it's not just about individual will. And the reality, David, is in addition to the science, and every year, this is race between climate change and then solutions and innovations to fight climate change. So people can be pulled into a sense of anxiety or even apathy, but we need to see the action, and government has a critical role to play. I do believe people are concerned, but they need to know what to do, and they need to see that the government is taking macro action. I think there's also needs to be an understanding with just getting back to the hottest year on record, and probably next year that record will be beaten, and the year after will be beat again, unfortunately. That's the track that we're on. The key to understanding this is that global warming, this overall warming trend, is what is creating unprecedented changes in the climate, because global warming and climate change are not the same thing. Global warming is causing erratic, unpredictable, extreme changes in the climate. And depending on where you live and what time of year, you will experience those changes differently. And that's where you're seeing the huge economic and social upheaval in Quebec, in Canada, and other parts of the world. So we have a huge incentive to take action, and I agree there is a disconnect between people's concerns and what we're actually seeing happen, and that is where government comes in to be able to communicate things. I think part of what the challenge in 2022 was we perhaps didn't communicate very well or well enough our policies. That's on us, right? So there's a huge communication piece here, and we need to focus on solutions and not just problems. Otherwise, people get overwhelmed and they disconnect.
Quickly,
we need to connect.
Okay. Quickly, I need to ask you about two two riding issues in NDG specifically. First of all, this question about armed private guards for synagogues and Jewish schools. I mean, a lot of MNAs, mayors, MPs, and François Bonnardel, the public security minister, yesterday said no. Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are exactly those of the leader in our party and our spokesperson, which is absolutely, we do not support armed public security. We support public security. We stand with the Jewish community. We understand there are serious security threats, but under no circumstances do we support armed security in schools. That is a non-starter.
So no to private armed guards.
Absolutely no to armed guards, yes to public security, and yes to security, but not armed.
Got it. The Empress Theater, since 2011, nothing has been done by the city. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have lots of thoughts on the Empress Theater. I used to go to Cinema 5
Me too.
to watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show and Pink Floyd The Wall. And so it's been part of my own growing up in NDG, and it makes me sad to see that it hasn't evolved. And so I think, look, one of my approaches in government is to never pass the buck to say, oh, that's municipal or that's federal. It's to bring people together around the table, community organizations, private sector say, how do we solve the problem? We did that on homelessness and public housing.
We're
going to do that around the Empress, bring folks around the table, look at private-public partnerships, very much working with the municipality because we have to save the Empress. And it's such a great location in NDG that we need to revive it and have some multi-purpose use, commercial, residential, cultural as well. So stay tuned. I'm always an optimist.
Right. Thank you.
We'll work on it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Desiree.
Thanks so much, David. Have a great day.
Take care. Desiree McGraw, opposition critic for climate change and the environment, and, of course, the MNA for NDG.